welcome to Biz Files. I'm Rosanne DeTorres, and I am the host of Biz Files, where you'll find business uncovered. Biz Files is the talk show for business owners by business owners, where you'll get tips and insights from successful entrepreneurs who reveal their secrets to success and the pitfalls to avoid. Learn to think like an entrepreneur with Biz Files. Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur or just starting out in business, Biz Files will offer you proven strategies from other successful business owners for starting and scaling your business. Please check out my website at bizfiles.tv for information about future editions of Biz Files and where you'll find tantalizing information and resources for entrepreneurs. This is my inaugural show, and so I thought I would tell you a little bit about me and how I got here and what the show is going to be about. So let's start with what the show is going to be about. I started this show because of the amazing experience that I had as an entrepreneur, quadrupling the size of my business in just 4 years. And because of that experience, I wanted to share with all of you the secrets that I learned in that process that catapulted my firm into being one of the top 500 fastest growing law firms in the country. We're also going to hear from other successful entrepreneurs who will be guests on Biz Files, and we'll learn from them about their keys to success. Each week, I'm going to interview a carefully selected guest from all sorts of industries, B2B and B2C. And that guest is going to share with us the key information that they relied on to grow their business and how they remain profitable. Here are just some of the topics we'll be discussing. How to work on your business instead of in your business. We'll discuss key marketing strategies for social media, print advertising, and paid ads like Google AdWords and Facebook ads. We'll cover human resource issues such as performance reviews and how to build the right team, culture, and hiring and firing strategies. We'll talk about how to build a brand. What does that even mean? And where do you begin to start to think about what your brand should be? We'll talk about how to evaluate performance and profitability of your business and your team. We'll discuss how and when to work with outside vendors and contractors. We're also going to discuss business development strategies, including the right way to network and build strategic partnerships. We'll learn about the key financial reports every entrepreneur needs to know and understand and be able to review and understand what they mean. We'll also even throw in some information about succession planning and thinking about the end game for that time in the future when maybe you want to pass your business on to the next generation or to your employees. We are really going to cover entrepreneurship topics from soup to nuts. Every show is going to be chock full of tips and tricks that you can use today to scale your business to the next level and operate in the most efficient, profitable manner possible. I want to teach you how to be intentional about your business. As every entrepreneur becomes more successful, there are ever increasing demands placed on our time and on our attention. This is why it's so important to be intentional about how we work on our businesses, what processes we set up to make those businesses operate, and how we scale those businesses. So now that you know a little bit about what the show is going to be about, let me tell you a little about my journey, how I got here, and why I think I have something valuable to share with you. I have been an entrepreneur for 24 plus years. My business originally started as just a law practice, but it blossomed from there into public speaking, consulting, and this television podcast show, in addition to my law practice. My law practice provided the material for my journey to understanding how to be an entrepreneur. And not only was my law practice the proving ground for how to be an entrepreneur, but how to be a successful entrepreneur. From 1994 to 2011, I was self-employed, solo, on my own, divorce and family law attorney. I like to say that was the period of my business where I was working in my business. And I mean, I worked at everything. I did everything myself with very little staff or outside help. So not only did I practice law for that time period, I greeted the clients, I opened the files, I sent the faxes, I prepared the documents, I made the photocopies, I posted the mail, I generated the client invoices, I received the client payments, I paid all the bills, yada, 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 yada. I did everything. And if you do that long enough, it's tiring. Now, I was an effective family law and divorce attorney, and I grew to have a reputation for tenacity in getting things done, even settling the most difficult cases. I also made a decent living, not a great living, but a decent living. And then my life started to change. My daughter grew up and she went off to college, and by the way, also went to law school, and she moved on with her own life. And I started looking around, asking myself, what did I want out of the rest of my life? And do I want to keep doing what I'm doing and getting the same sort of mediocre, average financial results? And you know, they say, if nothing changes, nothing changes. And here's another one for you. If it's meant to be, it's up to me. And out of my desire for a different, more financially secure life, I embarked on this journey of entrepreneurship. And I started to think about my law practice as a business and think of myself as an entrepreneur. Now, this was by no means a straight line journey. No, I zigged and I zagged and I took 2 steps forward and I took 2 steps back. And I heard someone say once, if the mountain were smooth, you couldn't climb it. And that's right. The mountain that I have been climbing was not smooth, but nevertheless, I did climb it. And that journey led me in all kinds of different directions. And part of that experience has led me here to try to help you, my listeners and my audience, maybe avoid some of the mistakes that I made and the zigs and the zags that I took in my entrepreneurial journey. Because in the beginning, I really kind of chased every shiny object that came along. So what do I mean by that? I took every class, every workshop, every opportunity I came across to deepen my understanding of business and entrepreneurship, I got involved in. It's good in one way because you get a lot of knowledge. It's bad in another way because it scatters your focus and it doesn't allow you to be intentional about your growth and your understanding. A couple of other things I did was I read all kinds of books. If somebody recommended a business book to me, I bought it. Most of the time I downloaded it on my Audible app so I could listen to it in my car through my Bluetooth. I do highly recommend that you do that. If you have an interest in learning about entrepreneurship, do yourself a favor, get the Audible app and start reading some books about entrepreneurship, business, or business in general. I do want to share with you some of the greatest books that were shared with me that I highly recommend to you. There's a complete list on my website that you can check out, but here's just a few. One of my favorite books of all time is the E-Myth book by Michael Gerber. He writes E-Myth books on many different industries There's one for lawyers, there's one for accountants, there's one for financial advisors, there's one for landscapers. I mean, there are e-myth books on many, many different industries. And if there isn't one for your particular industry, there's a general one that you can use. And it talks all about working, the difference between working in your business versus what an entrepreneur should be doing, which is working on their business. Another exceptional book I highly recommend is called The Advantage: Why Organizational Health Trumps Everything Else in Business. And that's by Patrick Lencioni. Another one is Living Forward: A Proven Plan to Stop Drifting and Get the Life You Want by Michael Hyatt. Traction: Get a Grip on Your Business by Gino Wickman. Another exceptional book is The Happiness Advantage by Sean Achor. One of my all-time favorites is The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks, where he talks about working in your zone of genius, that most entrepreneurs work in their zone of excellence, and that successful entrepreneurs strive to work in their zone of genius. And how do we get there? And we can actually teach ourselves how to get there. And another book would be The One Thing by Gary Keller, the real estate magnate. It's the surprisingly simple truth behind extraordinary results, and it has to do with basically focusing on one thing at a time. But if you can only read one book on my suggested list, please read the E-Myth book for your particular industry, and it should honestly be required reading for every new business owner. Everything I've done to be a successful entrepreneur has flowed from the principles outlined in the E-Myth, which in a nutshell, you could distill it all down to the idea that as business owners, if we want our business to work automatically without us being there every minute of every day, you have to get to the point where you're working on the business and not in the business. And Michael Gerber does an excellent job of outlining just how you're supposed to make that transition from working in your business to working on your business. Some of the key strategies suggested by Michael Gerber is to document every single process that is employed in your business. So let me say that again. Document every single process that is employed in your business. And that can get very granular and deep if you want to know the truth. And while reading the E-Myth, I started to think about my business in a way that I never had before. And I began to do exactly what Michael Gerber suggested, and that was to think about my business from my customer's point of view. And so I began to examine and document and what I call micromanage the most granular aspects of my client's experience with my business. And so what do I mean by micromanaging the client's experience? I mean, I thought about my customer's experience in the most incremental step-by-step way, whether they interacted with my business online, on the phone, by email, or in person. I documented every step of how that experience was supposed to occur. And I wrote out policies and I wrote out telephone scripts for what we say to our customers when they call us on the phone. And then I trained my team on what to say, but more importantly, why we're saying it. I included a script for greeting callers so that every person answering my business phone would say the exact same thing every time the phone rang. I created a script for conducting new customer intakes, we call them, that captured all kinds of critical pieces of information that I use to connect with and market to those customers, even if they don't end up hiring us. And these scripts in particular included how to handle objections. So I went through the most common objections people had. For example, why they should pay for an initial consultation when they can get a free consultation down the street. Why should they use us for their family law legal matter instead of another firm? And I came up with reasons why and trained my team on how to handle those kinds of objections. We did the same kind of granular microscopic examination of all the ways our customers interact with us, and we created thoughtful, intentional ways that we were going to interact with them. I mean, we even looked at how our business premises looked from the moment a client entered our parking lot to the entryway of the building, the exterior signage, the interior spaces and decorations, lighting, and the little things that you might put in a conference room where you meet with your clients. I mean, these are some of the granular ways that we began to look at our business, created a brand, and addressed how our clients were experiencing their time with us. In my line of work, we don't get walk-in customers, so people don't come in off the street. Anybody who's coming in the door is either the mailman or the delivery man or is a client that we're expecting, somebody that we're expecting. And so in my firm, we created a policy and a process so that everybody in the building greets those people by name when they come in the door. So this personal touch and recognition of the person's name that's coming in the door can make all the difference in relaxing your customer, giving them a sense that you're prepared for their arrival. We also offer them a drink, take their coat, that sort of thing. So these are just some of the ways that we began to work on our business instead of in the business. And once all these processes are thought out and written down, and that's key and it bears repeating, the processes have to be written down so that everyone knows what the process is. And if there's a transition in your team, any person can review the process documents to understand the company culture that you've created and how things are done. And so I did a lot of reading, as you can imagine, and studying, and I created a lot of processes. I took a lot of workshops, webinars, classes, and they all taught me how to think like an entrepreneur and how to run my business. There are many places that offer workshops and webinars or classes for you to learn about business in general on topics like business finance, marketing, networking, human resource issues like hiring and firing. If I were a new entrepreneur or a seasoned entrepreneur looking to kickstart my business or scale it to a new level, here are a couple of recommendations I can make to you for organizations that have the best classes and webinars if you're looking for educational material. Your local Chamber of Commerce. Some of the best classes I have taken have been offered by my Chamber of Commerce. Classes on how to use social media, how to craft your elevator pitch, networking 101, all things relating to cybersecurity, which any business that warehouses any kind of confidential data would be interested in. Many Chamber of Commerces, and mine in particular, does a wonderful job of providing educational classes for entrepreneurs. Your local business or economic development organization, in addition to the chambers of commerce, many counties have these business or economic development organizations that offer resources and training opportunities for businesses. So check your local area. Many colleges and local universities also have entrepreneurship programs. Fairleigh Dickinson University in New Jersey has the Rothman Institute for Entrepreneurs. I know Rutgers University also has a program for entrepreneurs. There are many colleges and universities throughout the country that offer these types of programs, educational programs for entrepreneurs. Also, the trade group for your particular industry, most of them offer some kind of business development training and education. So take advantage of that. My journey started when I went on what I call a rainmaking retreat. That's what it was called, a rainmaking retreat for lawyers. How to make rain, how to make business. And I learned there about how to market my law practice and how to use social media and those types of things. That experience, that weekend retreat, really whet my appetite for learning more. And it gave me a whole bunch of ideas that I could easily implement on my own. I'll give you a couple examples of things that I learned that I could do on my own. How to set up a Facebook, a LinkedIn, and a Twitter page for my business, and then how to post to it. And, so there's no point in creating these social media accounts for your business if you're not going to post anything to them. There's also a bunch of platforms like Hootsuite, for example, where you can actually pre-plan your social media posts, create them in advance, and then have them pushed out onto your social media accounts later on a particular schedule. I learned at this retreat how to create and publish a newsletter that I would send to everyone in my contact database. And I used a platform called Constant Contact to create that newsletter and to send it out. They have lots of templates that make it real easy. Even for entrepreneurs with no marketing budget whatsoever, these are some of the things that you could do easily on your own. In the beginning, I wrote all the content for my newsletter myself. And it only took me about an hour because, newsletters, you don't want them to be that long. People just won't read them. But now I buy my content because I have a little bit more leverage and resources available to me to buy content that I do push out in my newsletter. I also added a blog to my business website. And once the technical people, the website developer activated my blog, all I had to do was go into the website and actually write the content and upload it, and then it would appear on my blog. And in the beginning, I wrote all that content myself, and later on, we began to buy some materials that we would push out onto the website. We've actually gone back to writing the content ourselves because unique content is usually way better in terms of, search engine optimization, and uniqueness does play a role in how people find you. So these are just a few of the things that I learned at this retreat that I was able to implement right away. And because I had been practicing law in one specific geographic region for so long, I already had a good bit of brand awareness. But the social media posting and the newsletter publishing really helped elevate my firm's brand awareness outside of my community. And so as the clients kept coming in the door, I realized I knew very little about who they were and how they found me. I don't mean who they were, what their name was, but who they were sort of demographically speaking. And even more importantly, how they found me. So I created a process for figuring that out. And so you might want to know, well, how did I figure that out? Well, I really was asked a lot of questions by a coach that I had, and that compelled me to want to find out all this data. So I started by creating processes internally, again, getting back to process creation, for my staff to capture all kinds of data about my clients. And a lot of that data was captured in the very first phone call. These were things like the client's address and proximity to my office, because we learned early on that a client's physical proximity to my office address was really important into whether they hired us or not. We wanted to know also about their gender, their age, their educational levels, income, the number and ages of their children, how they found me, and even who their employers were. We wanted all of this information so we could begin to evaluate trends and see if there was anything recurring in this demographic data. Excuse me. I also wrote processes at this time for collecting other information that was important to my business, for such things as who was looking at my website, how did they find my website, who was sending me the most referrals, how many clients is each attorney in my firm bringing into the firm, how many clients does each attorney need to bring into the firm, or how many clients should each attorney bring into the firm to make the numbers work. We also began to collect information and write processes about revenue generation per attorney and how much each attorney should be generating. And when you boil all that data down, we began to call it metrics, which I affectionately refer to as the M word. So you may be wondering what I did with all this data that we began to collect. So there are so many possibilities for what you can do with the data. There's too many to get into right now, but we're going to talk more and more about that in Biz Files, but I'll give you a sampling of what I did with this data. So during the time that I was creating processes for how my team was going to interact with my clients, I also wrote down all of the demographic data points that I considered to be our ideal client. So I wrote a profile for who that client was and was very specific about it in terms of their age, their income, their educational background, and their geographic location. Why was I so specific? You know, the old adage is true. You can't be all things to all people, and you can't serve everybody. And so if you think you can say yes to every customer who comes in the door, you'll learn in time that's just not true. You have to be specific about who you're trying to go after, who you're trying to appeal to. Without an ideal client definition, also, your marketing and your business development efforts are going to be all over the place. So again, remember, I said to you, as businesses become more successful, you have to be more intentional about your efforts. So with an ideal client definition, you can be very specific about where you're going to target your marketing efforts and your business development efforts. So once I did that, once I defined who my ideal client was, I went through all the demographic data metrics for my current clients, and I asked myself, were those current clients the ideal clients? And the answer at that time was no. So that led me to take other steps to differentiate my marketing and business development efforts so that I could achieve my different demographic that I was going for. That became my ideal client. That's just one example of how I used that data in the beginning and how I still use that data. So wouldn't it be interesting for you to see if your current clients are your ideal clients? But before you can answer that question, you have to define your ideal client. Then you have to gather the correct metrics about your current clients and compare them to your ideal. Another way I used those metrics was to figure out that for some reason, 80% of our clients lived within a 15-mile radius of our business office address. And that was astounding to us because we only met with our clients 2 or 3 times in a given case, and most of our interactions are electronic or by phone. But this gave us a sense, at least for our industry, that our clients wanted to be relatively close to their divorce and family law attorneys. And when we compared that metric to our market share of the population within that geographic region, we knew that we could not garner any greater market share because we had pretty much saturated the market. And that compelled us to open a second office in a more densely populated area. So those are just a few examples of the type of metrics I began to use and measure and what I did with that data once I collected it. And so that was really the jumping off place for the real growth that we started to experience. And so we kept measuring and analyzing and measuring and analyzing. And then we began to tweak the data points we collected. We added some, we abandoned others. And what we found was that metrics just don't lie. They're very factual, so they tell the real story of what's going on in your business. And it's very organizational. So for the geeky types like me, most metrics can be distilled onto a single spreadsheet, and that can be very appealing from a business owner that's inundated with a lot of information. But to decide what metrics to measure, you got to ask yourself a lot of questions, and we're gonna go through some of those questions during the Biz Files TV shows. And so we're going to share those ideas with you in really significant detail as we go through. And because I have that personal experience in all of these processes that I've developed over time, and especially in learning from my mistakes, I think I have a lot of valuable insights that I can share with you along the way to help you grow your business and think like an entrepreneur and hopefully avoid some of the mistakes that I made. Of course, if you have specific suggestions for topics you'd like to learn about, please let me know through my website or by emailing me at info@bizfiles.tv. We're just about out of time today. To everyone listening or watching, thank you for joining me for this edition of Biz Files, the talk show for business owners by business owners.